Exercise 1C, question 16, book D2. Question number 16, exercise 1C. A contractor agrees to lay a road 3,000 meter long in 30 days. 50 men are employed and they work for 8 hours per day. After 20 working hours, he finds that the only 1,200 meters of the road is completed. How many more men he need to employ in order to finish this project on time if each man works 10 hours per day? Now basically in this question we have been given some values which we need to calculate on the basis of direct and inverse proportion. There are not only two quantities but there are more quantities, so first we have to analyze that which quantities are in direct proportion and which are in inverse proportion. So let's see what is being given. For example, the first quantity which is given, that is the length of the road. So this is the first quantity. The second quantity that we have been given, and this length of the road is actually 3,000 meters, which has to be completed in 30 days. So this quantity is 3,000 and has to be completed in these many days. But actually it did not happen. What happened? That 50 men are employed and they work for 8 hours per day. So this quantity is like 8 hours per day they worked. And then how many people? There were only 50 men who were employed. Now for this, after 20 working days, there some days have been passed and these were 20 working days. Total days were 30, but after, so actual question starts from here, that 50 men are employed. This was a contractor which has made an agreement, but after this 50 men are employed and they work for 8 hours per day, and after 20 working days he finds that only 1,200 meters, this much work has been done. How many more men? Basically we needed to calculate the number of people he needed to employ in order to finish this project on time if he wanted to calculate. So the first quantity, I assume that this is the length of the road. Then my second quantity is the working hours, because this is also important thing. And the third quantity is the number of labor or the number of men. These are the three quantities that we required. Okay, now let's start with the quantity number one, that is the length of the road. We know that the total was 3,000 meter, but this was made in an agreement, but actually there are only this much has been completed. So first quantity, let's say the length of the road is now 1,200 meters, and we assume that this is our first quantity, so I am putting it as x1. The second quantity is the working hours. For this we know that if there was 1,200 meters, the working hours were 28 hours per day, and there were total 20 working days. So if there are total 20 working days, and we know that this quantity working hours would be for 20 days. If each day is 8 hours, so it means that I'm just doing it separately over here so I can tell you over here that if there are 8 hours per day and they are doing it for 20 days, so total 8 times 20 is 160. So total working hours will be this much, 160 working hours. So I'm using this working hours quantity as 160. Now how many people were there? For this working hours, 160 hours, the number of people were 50. So this quantity Z1 is 50 men. Now moving on to the next condition. When we had been given total 3,000 meters, for which we have completed 1,200 meters, now how much is left? For the second quantity, when we move on to this and subtract 1,200 meters from 3,000 meters, we get this x2. This remaining length of the road is 1,800 meters now. Now the working hours have been also changed, as they are telling us now after this how many more men he needs to employ. So we wanted to calculate the number of people, which is an unknown quantity, and for this the working hours are 10 hours per day. Now let's say if it is 10 hours per day, and how many days are left? If there were total 30 days 20 days have been passed, so after subtracting 20 from 30, I'm subtracting 20 from 30 is 10. 10 days are left, and for 10 days I am multiplying it for, with 10 days the per day hours are 10, so I'm multiplying it with 10 and I get 100. So the total working hours are now y2 is 100. I have done this, so it is 100 hours. Now after making a complete data, I need to analyze that which quantities are in direct proportion and which are in inverse proportion. Now let's talk about, first I'm talking about number of people and the working hours. We already know that if there are more men are working, definitely the working hours would be less. We already have been doing it in different inverse problems, that when the people are increasing, working hours definitely be decreasing, so less working hours. Same goes for if there are less people, the number of working hours will be more. So it means that they both have a relationship, and that is called an inverse relationship. Now let's talk about people, and now we have talked about these two conditions. Now moving on to the length of the road and the number of people. So if I assume again that there are more men are working, definitely assuming that this is constant, so if there are more people are working, definitely the length of the road can be increased length of the road. And if I talk about less number of people, definitely it will be reduced length of the road. So from this I assume that this is a direct, more men, more length, less people, less length, reduced length. So it is a direct proportion. Okay. Now up from this I am making a relationship that number of men, as I assumed that the number of men is with a variable z, and the working hours with a variable y, and the length of the road, again more men, z is there, and increased length of the road, that is for x. So these variables I used for this. Now making a relationship, as I know that more men, it means that this and this has a z and y has an inverse relationship, so I'm putting it zy is equals to z1 y1 is equals to z2 y2. Now inverse proportion has an equation. When there are more quantities, I use this equation x1 y1 over is equals to x2 y2. Same is the case if there are two variables z and y, so I use z1 y1 is equals to z2 y2. Same goes for this people and increased length. We know that this has a direct relationship, so with the help of this, z has a direct relationship with x. So we already know that direct means that z1 over x1, so it means that x should be under z, so they both have a direct relationship. And this is this is also like this. I'm putting the values, and as I have to calculate z2, so I'm putting the values. First value z1, as I have used this 50 men, then y1 is 160, and this x1, which is 1200, is equal to, I have got c2 which I needed to calculate, it's unknown, y2 it's 100 hours, and then this x2, which is over here, it's 1800. Now first I have to multiply this with this, divide by this. The quantity is 6.666, and then if I have to multiply this with 18, because I have got this divided, so I get number of people as 120. Now the total 120 people are required, but since we know that we have got 50 men for first, so I'm subtracting those 50 people from this 120, so I get the number of people, yeah, it's number of men can be like you can write number of men or number of people. Number of men will be 120, which we got, minus total number of people, minus those 50 people which were already employed. So more men, only we wanted to calculate how many more men. So 70 men will be required to complete this project in time. If we wanted to complete the project in time, we have to find 70 people, more 70 people to complete this project on time. I hope this question is clear. Please, if you haven't subscribed my channel, do subscribe my channel. Keep supporting, like and share, and do not forget to subscribe with the bell icon.